Ladies and gentlemen, the challenger section finally calmed down. We had 5 draws today, which I think is the same number of draws as we've had in the last 3 rounds combined. It was actually a very quiet day in the challenger section. 2 decisive games. We're going to look at both of them, and then we will look at the standings. First game, Vasil Ivanchuk proving experience is stronger than youth. I feel really bad for Lumioi. She started like a house on fire. 2 wins out of 2 games. She's now 5 losses in a row. Ivanchuk having a really good tournament, showing why he is still one of the best players in the world. It was a very interesting line in the Sicilian defense, where this bishop just never got taken. Like, I have a very loose understanding of the Sicilian defense. Please trust me on this. So firstly, it's a closed Sicilian. We get this with bishop b5. Now, I'm aware of knight d4. Normally this gets taken and the knight comes out this way. So knight to f3. Now there's a6 is the main line, as I see. There's also e6. And there's just knight takes b5 that can be played. They're all about the same. e6 is what's chosen by Ivanchuk. Then short castles. Now a6 is the main move if you're going to play this way. Bishop d3 is strange. It is the main move, but it's still strange to me to block everything in. Now knight to c6 back. And now knight to d5. Just sacrificing the knight. Known theory. These players don't play it without knowing it. Knight comes this way. Rook to e1. d6. Knight drops back. Now knight to g6. And now officially I've got no games left in my database. You might ask, wait, hang on. This whole time, why don't you take the knight? Well, you don't want to do this because your king's in the center. So you've got to play something like d6. And d6 loses because there's d takes c6. Oh, because the knight's hanging. Okay, and if you move the knight and let's say you play knight back to here. Well, then you lose. Rook e1 check. Now you have to play knight e7. And now there's knight to g5, but there's probably also just this, which wins the knight back. So it's a tactical trick, and black's in trouble. So this all unfolds with those same kind of tactical ideas. The bishop drops back to c2, and black goes for this. They're happy to accept a doubled structure. You can see Lumioi was out of theory first, but eventually Ivanchuk had to think, but he had a serious time advantage. Look at this, 1 hour 42 versus 54 minutes, and here is where he spends his time, and he plays one of the best moves. He plays f4, and now it's 54 minutes versus an hour 13. 32 minutes now. You cannot be down this amount of time against Ivanchuk. He plays this. He's still up 40 minutes. d4 is the mistake, and he punishes her with swift effect. A couple of inaccuracies here. And then, bishop e3, knight gets out the way. A lot of tactics flowing in a Sicilian defense. A couple of mistakes on both sides. But you cannot get down to 4 minutes versus 43. Something has gone wrong. Black is completely winning as they're forced to trade rooks. White's forced to trade rooks, rather. There is the discover check, which is a nice trick, but it's just losing. Everything is losing. This is such a difficult endgame simply because you're down 2 pawns. If you haven't picked it up, Ivanchuk is up 2 pawns. Now, one of them is doubled. So maybe you don't count it. You don't count this one. But this is a permanent problem. 3 squares away from queening. I can create stuff here. And I've got this. Because Ivanchuk just puts extreme amounts of pressure on everything. And you're always on the defensive. That was the real problem. Ivanchuk was on the offensive this whole game. He was putting pressure the whole game. And she never had a chance. Really. It was a Sicilian. And she never had a chance. Look at this. He picks up 3 pawn advantage. I know they're doubled, but it doesn't matter. Bishop c5 and Ivanchuk wins. The only other game was, of course, Ilian Rubers sadly suffering her 6th defeat in 7 rounds. She lost to Marc-Andre Maurizio. It was a Caracan. It was a tall variation with a6. I know a6 has been played. I know it's part of the theory, but it is so strange. Whenever you face the tall variation, whenever I've played it, I've seen 2 moves. I've seen people trap in their bishop. I've seen h6 and I've seen h5. That's all I've seen. Those 3 moves. I have occasionally seen queen b6. Or queen c7. a6 is just not on my radar. It's played in 3% of games, according to my thing. Knight e2. Bishop now e6, and you might be asking, wait, hang on. Why is the bishop not trapped? Well, because you can't play f3. So, for example, if you now went with g5, firstly, that's not defended anymore because you played knight e2. Okay, so knight out to g3, now knight e7, just giving you the bishop. You can have it. I'm going to first play knight d2, now c5, now knight out to b3, c takes d4, knight takes d4. You could still take the bishop. We take the bishop, we take the knight, we take here. I always hate this as black. I never think this is good because I'm always worried about, you know, these kind of sacrifices, opening the king. Completely fine. Bishop to d3, queen d7, long castle, short castles, bishop e7, rook e1, g6, defending everything. Now g3, h5, locking everything down, a3, and short castles. And this is actually very solid. This is actually very solid. You're not too worried about sacrifices here, because it doesn't undermine too much unless you can get the queen to g4, which is currently impossible. Knight does a good job, you know, putting things under pressure. Actually a very resilient position for black. You know, I can look at this game and see how the structure comes about and maybe not be so worried. As the players now begin to kind of develop their pieces, engage on a little bit of conflict on the queen side. And Robers locks everything down here. Now, she does isolate it for a dark squared bishop, but what she is stopping is this bishop kind of moving anywhere. Like, this bishop has got like only like 3 squares it can occupy. I would always try and fianchetto it this way to put pressure. But it's doing a fine job on d7. You know, the queen still can't get in. It can get there and no further, as long as by magic this bishop doesn't become active. You know, if white could remove this pawn, they might actually be very happy, because they would have a dominant control of the e-file, and the bishop would be open. So, you know, rook to g2, knight f8, king h2, king c4. White should be better here, sacrificing this. Now, the idea is very simple. If bishop takes, rook takes c4 is pretty good, because the queen is kicked, and now I can begin creating my own threats. So, for example, queen h6, I can play f4. Which is, it's a move that looks impossible, because you're like, wait, hang on, takes, and now this. Yeah, but queen f5. And, you know, I'm threatening this. You know, the knight might come out this way, and, you know, your queen is offside. It's still better for white, you know, e6 or something. Now, if knight takes, queen h... sorry, not queen there. Queen h8 mate. So you've always got to be careful that I deal with the bishop. But, you know, rook c4. Now, bishop to d4, queen to d7, bishop takes, rook takes, and now queen d2. Now, knight to e6, very important. This bishop still cannot be opened up on that diagonal. It's something you've got to be careful of. We get c3 now. And now f4, look at that. The queen sealed out this way, because you either take or you push. And then you kind of open yourself up to troubles here, my friend. So, g takes f4. Now, bishop takes h4, rook eg1, knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, queen f5, locking everything down. White's better. 11 Robo should be better, but it's not so easy. Queen e3, bishop e7, rook e2, king f8, king g2, queen e6, queen d3, bishop d8. How are you going to beat me? You've sacrificed the pawn, you're getting the rook in. I can take here. Completely winning position for white. Completely. It's +3, +4. How do you win? 2 moves. f4 or queen takes f5. You can't play rook takes f5 because of queen g6. Uh-oh. 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 Now you might say, wait, hang on, I've got rook g2. Hit the queen, everything should be fine. Bishop takes e5 check. No worries, king h3, your queen is still hanging. Yeah, but now I can play queen e6. I've taken this pawn, which wouldn't have been possible if you'd played f4, or if you'd played queen takes f5. There was no tricks with queen g6, and now it's a draw. So rook takes f5 is wrong. Queen g6, rook g2, bishop takes e5, and we saw king h3. but it's not the first mistake that gets you, it's the second one. Now she plays f4, and she loses on the spot. Bishop takes f4. Because you just gave me another pawn. How do you take the bishop? Your queen hangs. If you take the bishop, I take your queen. You lose. So bishop takes f4, now king h3, but now queen e6. Same idea. Again, you might, rook can't take because I take your king. So you can play rook e2, but that just loses. Rook e4. And not only do I double attack this rook, I've cut the defense of your queen to that rook. So rook takes e4 is a mistake, queen takes, and you lose. Ilya Rubas loses another game. Let us look now at the how everything looks after the 7 rounds. So this was the master section. Check out the earlier video. We want to check out the challenger section and see how the table is shaping up after 7 rounds. We've just passed halfway. Here you can see the full list of results. Just 2 decisive results. Marc-Andre Morizzi and Vasily Ivanchuk both winning with black. Draws between Erwin Lamy, Carissa Yip, Bibisara and Vladimir, Daniel Yufa and Max Varmadan, Faustino Ora and Vendon Panesar, and Andy Woodward and Aiden Soleimani. I think I keep saying that wrong. So in the standings, it is led by Marc-Andre Morizzi and Andy Woodward, both on 5.5. Then on 5 points is Aiden. And then on 4.5, Vasil Ivanchuk and Faustino Ora, a full point behind the 2 leaders. Behind them is Daniel Yufa and Carissa Yip. Then it's Bibisara, Max Varmadan, Vladimir Ivanchich, Owen Lamy, Panesar Vended Panesar, Panesar Vended, Mioe Lu Mioe, and then Ilian Robas. That is how everything shapes up after 7 rounds at Tata Steel.